Bill Pito and Alan Hahn and Steve Alakette, and it's great to say hello to the play-by-play voice of the Islanders, Brendan Burke. Brendan, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on with us.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It means we're getting ready to go for hockey again. I like this.
Yeah, good news all around. So the Rangers have the bread man, but the Islanders have the sandwich guy. What do you have? Explain.
So there is a deli here in Huntington on Long Island, Blue Line Deli, that created a sandwich. Really, it's called the Berkey. It's named, I guess, kind of for me, but it's more my wife's picky order that they just got tired of making. So it's now on the menu, and it makes it easier for everybody.
Well, what goes on a Berkey?
Turkey, provolone, bacon, roasted red peppers, lettuce, mayo, oil, and vinegar. I think I got it all.
It sounds tremendous.
The turkey doesn't sound like that picky of an order, though. That sounds like a great order.
That's something I'd order.
Until you stand in front of somebody and order it, it doesn't sound picky, and then you're like, oh my God, wait, hold on, I got to write this all down. So
the high maintenance backup goalie would definitely order that.
I'm still trying to get them to do a fish stick sandwich for myself and Peter Body. We're in negotiations right now, but I mean, we give them enough business. We live right down the road from the place. The Blue Line's a great spot.
You might have to be in negotiations with people to eat that fish stick sandwich, though.
That's a fair point. I just want to be on the menu. If it doesn't sell, it's not my problem.
They don't actually have to have it. They just have to have it on the menu.
Exactly, yeah.
No one will order it.
So, Brendan, of course, you're gearing up. Islanders and Rangers will play in an exhibition game next Wednesday night, and then it's the Islanders against the Panthers in the qualifying round, game 1 on August the 1st. What's the approach been like for you as you get ready for all of this?
Yeah, it's just kind of a refresher. I mean, normally we don't go 4 months between games and consider it part of the same season. So, just kind of going back through and typically my playoff prep is just having an ability to be able to encapsulate everybody's season individually in one sentence and just try and boil that down. So I try and do that for every player on both teams and kind of make my way through the season and just kind of make sure everything's fresh in my mind. I've gone back and watched the Islanders against the Panthers, the 3 games that they played. But the Islanders and Panthers haven't played since mid-December. So it wasn't even fresh, even if it was going to be a playoff series in April. So, it's been a long time, and now everybody's healthy and everybody's ready to go. And, it's just a matter of keeping up with not only the Islanders, but the rest of the league as well.
Brendan, understanding full well what everybody's been going through to prepare to play, do you see yourself saying things like, well, maybe the goalie would have had that if he was in mid-season form? There's a lot of rust there. And do you think that maybe some of the goals that will be going in a little more frequently will be on the younger guys or maybe the veteran goalies and how everybody will respond?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. You've got a couple of things at play here because I think the lack of crowd is going to make an impact maybe positively for the younger guys. You think about playoff experience and what that actually means. The hockey is hockey, but it's the atmosphere, right? It's the crowd, it's the pressure. Do the young guys feel that pressure the same way they would have in a full building? Is that an advantage for them because they don't have to deal with that? And then you've got the real life question, right? Of the older goalies, the guys that are in their 30s, the guys that have a wife and kids back home and other things to worry about when they're trapped in a bubble versus a 22-year-old kid who's just having a good time and playing hockey like he would normally do. So I wonder mentally if it's not actually an advantage for some of the younger goalies going into a tournament like this.
Focusing on the Islanders, I find it very interesting that this group now, the roster they have now, obviously at full health, but also with some additions that they've made, we haven't seen this group yet for this team. If you think about it, with Green obviously and Pajot, it's a different look. They got a little bit older because they got healthy. And with that system that Barry Trotz plays, I find them to be a team that you don't want to take your eyes off them. They could be a sneaky good team in this thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the hockey consensus, right, is that the teams that grind it out will have more of an advantage because it's such a short 5-game series and you can kind of get to your game right away as opposed to the offense maybe takes a little bit longer to get going. So one thing the Islanders have is that fourth line intact, which they didn't have. Cizikas, Clutterbuck, Matt Martin, those guys have all been out with injuries for significant periods of time. So 68 games played this season. They played together as a line for 19 of those 68 games. So they are fully healthy, ready to go. Cizikas got a skate cut that he's back from. Cal Clutterbuck had just come back from a wrist laceration from a skate that he got in December. So that fourth line is great. A great advantage to have that back. And then you mentioned J.G. Pajot. He played 7 games after the trade deadline. The Islanders lost all 7 of those games. And now he has a chance to go through a training camp with a team that he didn't get a training camp before in the middle of the season. So, I mean, that really has to have an advantage for a young or a new guy coming into the situation to have a full training camp. And Barry Trotz is still tweaking the lines in practice, but lately he's been going with a French connection of Pajot, Broussard, and Beauvillier, and maybe he's got something there.
Brandon, the Islanders, of course, got off to a phenomenal start during the regular season. Just red hot right out of the gate. Do you think anything that happened during that stretch they can now bring to how they start in the qualifying round?
Yeah, so they had that 17-game point streak that took them from mid-October until Thanksgiving without losing a game in regulation, and they won 10 in a row. It was a remarkable run, and I think that was when they were probably their healthiest and probably feeling good. And I think that they came out of the gate, like I said, a team that relies on a grinding, hard-nosed style can get to their game a little bit quicker, perhaps, than some of the teams that are more finesse teams who rely on scoring 5-6 goals a night. This team can win 3-2, 2-1 hockey games, which is, what you get at this time of year. So, maybe that ability to kind of hit the ground running where some other teams can't could prove to be an advantage. But the 5-game series is so short, guys. I mean, you lose that first game and it feels like the season's over. So, that first game is going to be awfully important for every single team in this tournament.
Brendan, there was 56 best 3 out of 5 series played in the 80s. 89% of the time, the team that won first, game 1, wins the series. A lot of factors here. We're talking about healthy players coming back. Players that don't have families, I think, will have an advantage. I can put myself in that spot and see where I'd be happier to keep playing if I was a young guy playing. So you factor all these things in. You're going to be covering the Islanders very closely. When you look quickly at the Rangers-Carolina series, do you see something there that's maybe a little bit distinct in the way that series is going to shape up?
Well, I'm interested to see what Carolina looks like with their full contingent of defensemen. I mean, they all of a sudden are extremely loaded on that back end with, getting Vatanen, getting Brady Shea. It's a very different back end now that they've got Dougie Hamilton healthy. So that's a real strength. It was already a strength for that team. They're still missing Brett Pesce, and that's still a strength for that team. Will be their top 6. You might even toy with dressing 7 defensemen with that lineup because of the way that they're constructed. And then obviously I'm as curious as anybody to see, the goaltending situation, see if Shesterkin can handle, the playoff load, can be the number 1 guy and can navigate his way through it. I do think that is one of the more compelling, qualifying round series is that Rangers-Carolina series. I'm looking forward to it.
Hey, Brendan, I think you can see this question segueing to Alan, and he wants to know about Sorokin. I'll let you take it from here, Al.
Because you mentioned Shesterkin, so we're talking Russian goalies now. So I get excited about that. Now, obviously, you have this season to finish, and there's plenty of excitement about the potential for this season. And out of all the sports, we've talked about it here on this show a lot, it feels like almost everyone should feel they have a chance to win the Stanley Cup, whereas in other sports, you have the obvious contenders. Here, it seems like a lot more parity and opportunity. However, you can't help it as an Islander fan to also wonder in a couple of months when there's a new season starting that there will be a goalie there. And Ilya Sorokin is somebody that is the white whale like Garrett Cole was for the Yankees. He's been waiting for them to sign this guy, and there's a lot of excitement around him. Are you feeling that same kind of energy, even though you're focusing on this team and right now, there's this sense of anticipation about what's to come with this player?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is a guy who was drafted in 2014, right? So we're talking 6 years after he was drafted. He's still young, but he's developed into potentially the best goalie in the world that's not playing in the NHL. He's good friends with Igor Shesterkin, which is interesting. And I think that actually watching him come and have success with the Rangers maybe help nudge him in the Islanders' direction because there is a little friendly competitive nature between those two guys. But let's be honest, look at this Islanders franchise and run through the number of goalies, no offense, Steve, that they've had over the last, 2 decades, really. But you're talking about the one thing they've lacked is a long-term elite-level goaltender. They've never had their Henrik Lundqvist. They just haven't had that. Thought it was Rick DiPietro, didn't work out. They traded Luongo before that. Like, they've run through all of these goalies. Granted, this guy's never played a game in the NHL, but you hope that maybe this is it. This is the guy that they're finally got. They're bringing him over. He's under contract for next year, and maybe he could be that elite-level long-term goalie to kind of solidify the Islanders' creases. They've been, bouncing around from. I mean, they got a Vezina Trophy finalist in Robin Lehner, and he was gone in 1 season. So, they just haven't had that guy in a long time, and you hope that this might be it.
Brendan, I would imagine all these years you've been calling hockey that being in the arena with the fans and the excitement generated by the fans has a huge impact on how you approach your game call. What kind of adjustments do you think you're going to have to make by calling these games remotely?
Yeah. I think that, the way I view and I've always viewed my job is to try and translate the energy in the building to the people at home, because that's the one thing you don't get, right? You don't get that through a TV screen or through a radio unless the play-by-play guy can match that. So now I've got to generate it myself. And I think that we've got that preseason game against the Rangers next week. It's going to be trial and error. I think I'm going to try and feel my way through it. I'll watch it back. You have the ability to think that if I do a normal goal call, it's going to sound way over the top because there's going to be nothing else happening. So it's interesting. I don't know what it's going to feel like or sound like, but we'll give it a shot and we'll kind of watch it back and try and figure out what the right tone is, so that it doesn't sound flat. It brings some energy, but also doesn't sound like it's completely over the top.
Do you want to practice one quickly for our viewers before we let you go?
I mean, it's not the same thing sitting in an empty room by myself screaming scores at a TV screen. So we'll have to wait and see on Wednesday.
All right. Hey, Brendan, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us, and enjoy the qualifying round and hopefully beyond for the Islanders. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.